Okay, we're recording, and we can get started with our Empathy Cafe. This is our Empathy Cafe on the topic of why is a culture of empathy important to you? So we've been working on developing a project to articulate, the whys of a culture of empathy. That's what I've been working on for about 14 years. So we're doing some training design, and part of that training design, we wanted to really hone in on why people find that the culture of empathy is important. So that's our topic here. And so I guess we can start with just a quick introduction, your name, where you're located. And I'm Edwin Rutch from San Francisco Bay Area. And Bill, do you want to?
Sure. I'm Bill Filler from the San Francisco Bay Area as well.
Alex?
I'm Alex Long from Virginia.
And Dean?
I'm Dean from across the pond in Plymouth, United Kingdom.
Great. And Sarah?
I'm Sarah from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay, well, so maybe I'll just set our intention. I haven't been doing that as much as I like to, but I'd like to set the intention for this empathy circle. At least my intention is to create a culture of empathy, which in short means that each person can fully express themselves and feel heard and understood to their satisfaction, and for that to happen mutually. And the circle, the empathy circle sort of models that at the basics, because we use active listening. Hey, James, do you want to just say your name, where you're from?
James Green. I'm in Syracuse, New York.
Okay, welcome. So I think we're ready to get started. Looks like it's just going to be a smaller group. So there's just 6 of us. Does somebody want to keep time for 5-minute turns?
Sure.
So yeah, so we're ready to get started. So we'll lock the group now, I think. So I think this is, we can, don't admit anyone else after. So okay. I think we're going to close the group at this point. So whoever would like to start can start. And our topic is, why is a culture of empathy important to you? Or whatever else is alive for you. Well, I'll start. What the heck? And I'll speak to James.
Listening.
Oh, who is keeping time? Did someone say that keep
I'm
time?
also keeping time.
Okay, oh, cool.
If Bill is as well.
That's right.
Okay, there was speaking to you because there was an issue about the training. We're just still an ongoing thing that you weren't part of the training, and then you were complaining about it in the Facebook group. So I just wanted to sort of name that and maybe kind of start addressing it.
You're acknowledging that it's an ongoing issue, that I'm not part of the training, and that I was complaining about it on Facebook yesterday, and so you'd like to name that.
Yeah, and this is the rotten apple, the rotten apples empathy circle here. All us rotten, rotten apples.
It's the rotten apple empathy circle here.
Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering if you see yourself as a rotten apple too. So, in a sense, I think that we're all. It's kind of. I'm come from an evangelical Christian background. It's like we have all sinned and are all unworthy. So I guess I'm kind of like comfortable with with that. Oh, Sarah dropped out. Trying to get back in. Yeah.
So you come from an evangelical background, which holds something like a belief that we've all sinned and are trying to make up for that. I missed the last.
Yeah, it's just that it's. For me, I kind of related that comment about it's all the rotten leadership. I had to kind of laugh at it because I'm not. It's like. I think it was kind of funny, I think it's just maybe you're trying to get people's attention, but there is a thing about you know, we're all kind of messed up, and if we just kind of accept that, then, you know, so yeah, don't take it too personally.
So I made a comment that it's all about the rotten leadership, and you find that funny. It's we're all messed up. We all have limitations.
Right. We're all, and that, I think it's kind of like, instead of sin, I think it would be that we're all unempathic in some ways. We all have our blocks to empathy. And that's true. We all have, I see that we all have our blocks to empathy, but we also have empathy. So we have both, you know, and it's just, how do we kind of expand on that empathic, you know, way of being is, I think is just important to know that we all have our blocks. We're just, I guess it's to get away from the self-righteousness, right? Because I just see a lot of self-righteousness, like, hey, I'm right, you're wrong. Just acknowledge that we all kind of mess up in one way or another.
Yeah, so we all have limitations and blocks to being empathic. And for you to say that is a way of overcoming or undoing a self-righteous stance that blames other people and thinks that you're right or we're all perfect.
And I mean, maybe you're a little bit self-righteous yourself there. Like, I wonder, do you see yourself as having been self-righteous? Like, hey, you guys are all rotten. It's like, you're kind of implying that you're the perfect one here, right? It's like, you know, so.
You're curious if I have a view of myself or see any self-righteousness in myself, taking a kind of stance that's like, I'm the one, I'm the flawless one. It's just everyone else is.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's a little self-righteous, like, hey, I want dialogue, I want all this kind of stuff, but, you know, so just maybe you have your flaws too. So I just wonder if you think so.
You're wondering if I see my own flaws.
Yeah. And so I do think dialogue is the way forward, and there has been this space to dialogue about the training issues. So it is, you know, it's been open to, it's an open forum for discussing. So I hope we can kind of come up with some kind of a plan to address the issues around the training, you taking part in the training.
This space has been available, is still available for us to discuss this and similar issues, and we're hoping.
And it's a culture of empathy. I think that's part of a culture of empathy, a principle of the culture of empathy. And why is it? Yeah, because I just see that ultimately, if we just kind of talk it out, that things work better. So that's sort of the why. Things just work better.
Things work better when we have a space to talk it out.
Yeah, I feel fully heard.
All right. Sarah, would you listen to me?
Sure. Wait a second, I just need to grab a piece of paper.
I do see that I have many, many flaws and many blocks to being empathic very often. And when I target Edwin and say he's the mastermind and he's the one responsible, I'm in a very real way, I'm honoring him as someone I think who takes responsibility, holds it, and sticks his neck out.
You're reflecting about how Edwin is somebody you honor and respect because he sticks his neck out, but you're also admitting you have some blocks to empathy and Edwin may be targeted.
When I put myself in a leadership role, I work to invite constructive criticism because I know that I have blind spots and I want
Mm.
feedback. I want help seeing my blind spots.
Mm. You're reaching out because you're acknowledging you have blind spots, and especially in a leadership role. It's important to acknowledge that and get critical feedback.
Yeah. I've spent the day yesterday spamming the restorative circles groups with the word restorative circles. And there's a similar situation there where I am putting the responsibility of what's happening there on Dominic Barter, who has taken on a leadership role, an unofficial leadership role in that group. And I am doing my best to point out blind spots and create dialogue with him, while at the same time making it about me, holding space for myself as much as I can.
Okay. And so you're reflecting on spamming the restorative circles group and in an effort to create dialogue with their unofficial leader, Dominic. You're spamming with the word restorative circle, and you're emphasizing you're needing dialogue with the leader.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That may be difficult to understand in this context, but it's very much related. And it's an open question for me when people are not open to dialogue. To what extent do I want to protect those people, or what degree do I want to just focus on myself and what I want?
So you're breaking this down into what happens when people are not open to dialoguing. Do you protect them, or do you make a different choice?
Yeah, the different choice is about taking care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's an open question. Part of the question is, what does taking care of myself really look like in that situation?
So you're reflecting on this timeline. So when people are not open to dialogue, what does it look like for you to protect yourself or protect them?
No, not protect myself, take care of myself.
Take care of yourself. Thank you for that clarification. So when people are not open to dialogue, what are the choices regarding you taking care of yourself?
That's it. That's it. And that is my time. So thank you.
Thank you, James. I appreciate that. Bill?
Listening?
So I am relating into my own blind spots regarding leadership. So when I have a blind spot, I'm really critical of myself and extremely hard on myself when I feel I've made a mistake.
So you're talking about that your self-evaluation of yourself is very rigorous when you see yourself in a leadership position. You take it very seriously.
And sometimes I mishear things. And I also realized that I do have a value, I value discretion. And sometimes I have obviously I have a blind spot. And only after the fact, after I've made a mistake, do I realize a different course of action was warranted.
So you're kind of talking about, you know, in retrospect, you can see mistakes, which is very easy. And so you're kind of like, and I get the sense you're trying to integrate that into your processing so you could get over the blind spot earlier, maybe notice the mistake earlier and make a pivot.
Yeah,
if necessary.
I can't even imagine in the moment how I could have even made that mistake, given that I have my values.
Mhm.
But then now that I have made a mistake, I have to consciously put it in my head to change that behavior. And so it's about discretion.
Okay. So you're thinking about in reviewing your behavior and you see that you made a mistake. You said it was about discretion. So it's basically about, you know, learning to be sensitive to that. And then also giving yourself a suggestion as to how you might change your behavior in the future.
And not beating myself up.
Right. Okay. Without self-flagellation.
Yeah, just like thinking, oh my God, I'm a horrible person.
Mhm.
How could I have done that? So I have a tendency to really think about other people's needs. And if I've done something that I feel is hurtful by accident, I'm really hard on myself and I need to not be hard. I care about their feelings.
Mhm. So you're looking for a balance between, you know, being legitimately self-critical and self-aware and mindful with not, you know, again, beating yourself up too much.
Right, right. And just, you know, accept like I think it's good to be self-aware moving forward and making new choices moving forward. And in my work, I'm always having to use a lot of discretion and carefulness because people have different viewpoints and they can become just kind of, if I'm not mindful of their different needs, I could basically burn bridges.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm always having to balance that out.
Okay. So you're describing a kind of complex and sensitive workplace where there are a lot of different ideas and things like that. So you have to be very careful about how you approach and frame things in order to maintain kind of like social harmony.
Well, it's more like it specifically, and I can say this without, you know, it's very general. So it's like the mask issue, for some example. Different people have
Correct.
different ideas about that, and it's contentious. And I'm having to navigate a very, like, kind of a minefield regarding that
Mhm.
because there's the law, and then people are really like deciding to be individual freedom, and then it's very complex. And so I'm having to hold a space where I have people on either side thinking polar opposites. And I know I will terminate those relationships if I'm not careful because people are in that space where they think there's a life and death on either end. It's really weird, but yeah.
Okay, so I don't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, because you're talking about the mask issue and that people, it creates a tremendous amount of polarization and people feel it's life and death on either end. And that creates basically a minefield for you at work.
Yes. And how am I doing with my time? My time's up. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Bill.
Okay,
I heard.
great. I'll talk to Alex.
Cool.
All right. So why is a culture of empathy important? A culture of empathy is important because I believe that it helps us to understand the basic human condition in a much more realistic and actually positive and hopeful way than the way we've been conditioned. I'll stop there.
Okay. So you're reflecting on why building a culture of empathy is important to you, and
Mhm.
you find it valuable because it helps build kind of more realistic understanding of what's going on with people.
Right, right. It leads to greater self-awareness and greater awareness of the capacities, and limitations of other people. I'll stop there.
Okay. So it builds both an awareness in yourself and an awareness in other people in terms of both weaknesses and strengths.
Right. And that the empathy, and then we're talking about what's dialogue, what's empathy. Those are very, we have an idea, but they are still, there was a New York Times article just the other day that talked about 5 different views of empathy. So there's a lot of discussion. So when we say, just choose empathy, people don't exactly know what you mean. I'll stop there.
Okay. So then you're kind of digging into it a little bit, and you're kind of, I don't know, you're finding some curiosity around like what exactly is empathy, and then the ambiguity around it or something.
Right. And I believe that this empathy circle is a tool for dialogue, a wonderful tool for people who know I've been here for a long time. For me, not as long as Edwin or some of the other people, but I'm a big believer in the tool. But a tool it is, and it's not a magic wand, and it's not like a fantasy. I think that actually strengthens the argument for the empathy circle as a tool, because it puts it in reality and perspective with building what I would consider a larger culture of empathy. I'll stop there.
Okay. So you're reflecting on this empathy circle and how it's not a silver bullet. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it's definitely a very valuable tool for empathy. And I think you said more. I didn't quite get.
That's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. It should, but it shouldn't be. It's not a magic wand.
Mhm.
Right. And then that builds towards a culture of empathy, and then that's a larger goal over time. And a culture of empathy is greater than an empathy circle. So an empathy circle exists within the culture of empathy, seeks to build a culture of empathy, but it's not one and the same. I'll stop there.
Okay, so you're saying this as a tool to build a culture of empathy, but there's more to a culture of empathy than just the empathy circle.
Right. And I do believe that there is magic in the circle, and the magic is not in the particular, like when you describe how it works, the technicalities, people go, oh, that sounds dull. But what happens is it helps to reveal the magic that's in each one of us. In other words, we're seeing capacities in ourselves and other people that we don't usually see. With that sort of experience, not just a cognitive definition, but with that experience, which includes emotional components as well, then I think that helps us open up to seeing and envisioning a culture of empathy. I'll stop there.
Okay. So you're kind of reflecting on how, even though this practice seems very simple to outsiders and almost kind of like, I don't know, just simple and basic, it actually has this really powerful, magical ability to kind of reveal our own capacities as humans, and by revealing that, it kind of builds up to a culture of empathy or something.
Right, and the magic is not in the circle. The magic is in each one of us, and then the circle is an excellent tool to kind of reveal that. Okay, how am I doing on time there, James?
Another 15 seconds.
Okay, I feel heard.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate that.
Sure. It's my first time in a while, so. Okay. Is Dean? Did you go? Okay.
I'll listen to you, Alex.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Yes. So I guess. So I'm just kind of jumping into this empathy circle stuff again. So I don't necessarily have like a well thought out answer for why building a culture of empathy is important to me. Maybe I'll stop there.
So you're just dipping your toe back into the water of the empathy circles, so you don't actually have a well thought out overview of the next stage.
Yeah. But I definitely, have thought about this stuff, not necessarily because of the empathy circle, but just walking down the street, I see political billboards and everything. So it definitely like, I think about it, and I think about like in my various social circles, like just the total difference of perspectives that people have. And sometimes I'll slip into one perspective and I'll just be like, how can anyone think anything differently than this? And then I'll meet people who are thinking anything differently than that. And then it's like, oh, okay, that actually is not that crazy. So, yeah, I'll stop there.
So you're surrounded at the moment with lots of political billboards and statements, and people are holding views, and you're holding your own view. You're holding it quite strongly, and then you'll hear someone else's alternative view, and you'll actually open up to that alternative view and give it some space.
Yeah. And I just kind of like, it always kind of shocks me how easily I'll slip into this like super adamant, perspective about my view. And then like, and then all it takes is like a little bit of exposure to someone, reasonably presenting some other part of the other viewpoint. And like, I can start to be like, oh yeah, why was I being so crazy about that? And I see other people doing that as well in my daily life.
So I hear you talking about the fact that although you may have an established view, once you talk to someone else that can build a good alternative viewpoint, you find yourself looking at your own view and going, well, why on earth was I so entrenched in that previous view?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just like, it's just kind of shocking to see myself doing it sometimes, and to see other people doing it, and it's like, I don't know. I don't have like a good solution, but I guess that's why building a culture of empathy is important to me or something. Because I can just see how easy it is to kind of slip into these like extremely like tunnel visioned kind of perspectives on the world and on conflicting viewpoints and stuff like that.
So I hear you talking about the fact that it's very, very easy to slip into this narrow-mindedness, and you're wondering why we are so prone to be doing this.
Yeah, and not just wondering why, but like, I guess that's the reason why I feel like something like this is valuable to do. Is like sometimes just discussion is like, it's magical. Like Bill was saying, even though it's nothing complex, it has a magical quality to it. Yeah. So
the power of discussion, like Bill has actually said earlier on, is actually the key to developing this culture of empathy. Yeah,
I don't know if it's the key, but like with all the police stuff that's going on, like a friend and I were talking, and like, we were thinking, if there was just like, if police officers and their communities like went to picnics together or barbecues or something like once in a while, like that would probably go a long way towards building empathy, just like hanging out together and talking when, and it's not a sexy idea or anything like that, because it's so just like, oh, okay, sure. But it does seem very powerful just when you just spend time with people and just get to know them as a human.
So I hear you talking about the polarity that's happening at the moment with the police and the public, and you're actually saying that maybe they should just actually sit down together and have a picnic, and spend some time in each other's company. Although it might not provide the solution, it would provide them with a little bit more empathy towards each other. Yeah,
because that's, like I said in the beginning, that's sort of what I've experienced in my own life, is I'll get super adamant, and then it's just a matter of not being exposed to the other side enough.
Yeah, I'm hearing you talking about the silos that we can find ourselves in so quickly, and we have to occasionally experience the other point of view to actually break free from this conditioning.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Edwin, let's close the circle then. Let's go.
Okay, listening.
Fully 360. Culture empathy. Well, it's quite strange hearing what's going on over the pond, because I don't watch the news anymore. I just can't handle it. it's a bunch of hype. Pause.
You're just finding it interesting what's happening here in the United States, and you're not watching the news. You just find that that's hype, and so.
Yeah, I mean, I used to watch the news all the time, and all I was stressed, because the news is a stressor. Now I don't watch the news. I hear from people passing, them talking about something, and if I think, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll go and look it up.
So you have a new sort of approach. You don't watch the news because it was so stressful. Sounds like you feel calmer now, and you get the news sort of by just hearing it from people. And if you hear something in passing, then you'll go check it out if it sounds of interest.
Not necessarily just of interest. I know that's what I said, but I mean, if it piques my interest, so it may not be something I want to look into, but if I hear lots of people talking about it, I'll have to go and review it.
Okay, so it's more that if a lot of people are talking about it, then you have to go, sounds like there's some push to go check it out and review it, maybe look it up.
Yeah, I want to understand why they're so engaged by it. I want to understand the why. I've always been a why man. Why am I a why man? I don't know why. I just am.
Yeah, so you're just realizing that you're a why man. You want to sort of understand what's behind, like why are they interested in it? Just kind of look behind the curtain. What's behind? Why is this like the way it is? And this sounds like it's just part of your nature, and you don't even know why it is part of your nature.
No, I've always been looking through the looking glass man. Stepping through the looking glass and trying to see who's pulling the levers and why people are allowing their levers to be pulled. And of course, my levers are always pulled because I'm open to things, but that's part of being human.
Yeah, so you're just going deeper into that you've always been trying to see who's pulling the levers, why are they pulling the levers, and it's just been part of who you are to kind of dig into that.
Yeah, so this concept of understanding and opening up is what will allow us to then relax with each other. And that relaxing and walking in each other's shoes is what I understand as empathy. You may not necessarily want to be that, but you can understand why they are that.
Yeah, you're seeing understanding empathy is that why, going kind of behind what is, or going deeper into it. And there's something about that understanding that is relaxing.
Well, yes, because when you relax, I found if I relax with the universe instead of being stressed with it, I understand and see a lot more. Whereas if I'm stressed, I'm all narrow-minded and small. But if something happens that I have no control over, I just go, okay, yeah, I'm meant to learn from this. I won't like go and rage like I used to rage. Now I just go, okay, this is obviously a life lesson. I'm meant to learn it. Time to calm down.
So if you get stressed about things, it sort of narrows your vision of what's going on. You have all this stress, your vision gets narrowed. And if you're relaxed, you're calm, sounds like your vision is more open and more broad. So you just try to be calmer about things and not get stressed. So you can sounds like you value that openness and sort of way of being, and sort of seeing what's behind things and being open and calm, feeling open and calm about it, and not getting all stressed like you used to be.
I like to talk to people on different levels, the different sides of the equations of life, just to find out what's going on. And I think if you do this and open yourself up to the alternative viewpoints, it enables you to try and understand why they're so entrenched in their views, and therefore I forgive them, which is rather arrogant of me, and I should not be so arrogant, but sometimes I find myself being very arrogant, which is my biggest blind spot, I think.
So you see that you can be, your biggest blind spot is your arrogance about people. But if you can really understand where they're coming from, you can just kind of forgive them about why they're doing. Maybe there's some understanding, and you can have forgiveness and about why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, never forget, but always forgive. Thank you, I feel.
Yeah, don't forget what they did, but be willing to forgive it.
Very good.
Okay, then speak to Bill.
Listening.
Yeah, so one thing I was thinking of is I wanted to kind of come up with a plan for, maybe if with that you and Bill, I mean, you and Lou and I and James would have an empathy circle specifically on this part of him taking part in an empathy in a training. So I was just thinking maybe we could schedule that. So I just wanted to raise that topic.
So you were thinking about
Topic has been going here is everyone is talking, we've been talking about kind of going deeper. It's like if it's sort of if we're in sort of this cave system, right, this black cave system, kind of going with the flashlight, exploring all the different channels, all the different rooms, that there's something about shedding light on all these different hidden things that we don't see seems to be the topic I'm hearing here about the benefit of a culture of empathy. A culture of empathy as we go into all those different rooms and explore them and shed light and into those corners.
Okay, so you're talking about the theme that you seem to see is about going into the netherworld of our own dark caves and kind of shedding light into it.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with some good metaphors here. Like I'm thinking of Hades. We're in Hades. We're in hell. We want to shed light on all the different corners of hell. Because for some reason, shedding light on it kind of gets rid of some of the pain of it.
So you're saying you're feeling like we're in Hades and shedding light gets rid of some of the pain.
Yeah, so I'm struggling for metaphors here. So,
Yeah, looking for
yeah.
metaphors.
Yeah, so anyway, that would be, it was, there was some concern about James because sometimes in some parts of the empathy circle, I mean, more like the introduction, he gets all mad, he gets sort of disruptive, people feel intimidated. And so there was concern that James would do that, be sort of disruptive in the training. So I think that was part of the concern about him not being part of the training.
So you're saying that the concern about James being not being part of the facilitation training was his disruption in the circle.
Yeah, and it's never been a disruption within the circle here that we're doing. I've never, had James always follows the process 100%. He's very good at the reflection. So it's been more outside of kind of more the introduction part or online with the judgments and, stuff like that have been sort of kind of issues.
So you're noting that James's behavior within the circle has been fine in your experience, but the problem has occurred outside of the circle in the introduction and also online, things like that.
Yeah, so I think that the circle about all that and in terms of him taking part in an empathy in the training is, it needs a dialogue around that and with the trainers. So that would be my suggestion.
So your feeling is that there should be a dialogue around James joining the training.
Yeah, and again, it's just for shedding light on everyone's concern. We were talking about getting into the dark corners, like this is having that dialogue would just shed light on those different dark corners. And, with that understanding, I think it, I don't know what is that? It's, if it's healing or, yeah, it's just something about that I think can sort of resolve issues.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking that a dialogue would then shed light on it and help to resolve the issue.
And it's one of the principles that I see as a principle of a culture of empathy is that we're, always sort of open for dialogue. So, yeah.
And so you think that one of the principles is that we're always open for dialogue.
Yeah, so I'm trying to tie it into the why again. Yeah, it's it just feels better, seems to work. It's I guess that's I'm trying to tie that into I like the comment about it's magical. Somebody meant in the magical part. It's sort of magical. Yeah, it's a richer experience than kind of shutting off.
So dialogue is a richer experience than shutting off.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like just some,
It's fun
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Okay, great. All right. Let's see. I'll talk to Sarah.
Okay, yes. I'm ready.
Okay. Um, okay. So again, let's see. Edwin has said that he's going to train James, so I assume that he will train James. That's what Edwin's going to do. I'll stop there.
You're reflecting that Edwin is going to train James.
Right. But Edwin, really, his proposal is that, dialogue's always good, and I think that's naive. I think that, he's kind of like foisting this on me. Edwin has not really empathized with me, and he's really not understood me or the experience of other people who James has mistreated. I'll stop right there.
Okay. And so you're feeling in Edwin making this decision, he is not empathizing with you or the others who have had conflicts.
Right. And it's not as though I've had one-on-one over 5 hours of dialogue with James. Lou and I, after that, when we told James that, we were not ready to train him, we had another hour of dialogue with James. And James's response was to lie, distort, and tell a bunch of things. I won't go through the whole litany, but there's quite a bit over a period of 9 months for me. And then also right now he's trolled a disabled person who's afraid to be here with him, and that still goes on. And that's not a culture of empathy to me. I'll stop right there.
So yes, so and just letting you know that I have a person in the back who's
Okay, just go on.
be
It's okay.
transparent. Okay, so you're reflecting back that James has trolled a disabled person who is no longer in this group, and you've also offered over 5 hours of dialogue.
No, we participated, not offered. We did it.
Participated in over 5 hours of dialogue.
Right.
And the response from James was non-empathic. You specifically said he lied and distorted things.
Yeah, and in the circle itself, James is an intelligent, interesting person who I actually enjoyed that 5 hours. But then he takes and he distorts and he does whatever he thinks according to his own sort of, and it's always he sets up this, this hypothetical that sounds reasonable, but greatly absent, even though he talked about it today, is any kind of examination over his own behavior. For instance, this, as far as I understand, this person has told me that trolling thing is still up. He won't apologize, or he won't take it down. And so that goes on for months. So that's not explored. That's and to me, call me old fashioned, but that's not a culture of empathy. And the other thing I will say about dialogue, yeah, open to dialogue, and I have been. And so I don't appreciate, not participating in the circle as characterizing me not open to dialogue. But also, there's no forcing in an empathy circle, and that's been a big rule, and I see a lot of that. So I feel kind of really coerced and uncomfortable that Edwin consistently doesn't hear me, doesn't respect my boundaries, wouldn't talk to me about this. And so I feel like he's trying to empathy shame me. And this is an example for people, if Edwin posts this, of what it feels like when an empathy circle is misused.
Okay. So basically, you're feeling your boundaries were not heard and held And you having Edwin share this in this moment didn't take into consideration your needs, and you're showing how, and you're actually reflecting on how there has that there's been some trolling, and that hasn't been examined. The impact on other people, behaviors that are not empathic, and how that's had impact on others, and that you're wanting to state a boundary and wanting self-reflection and a changed behavior.
Yeah, and then this was sort of like I think I feel a major hurtful move by Edwin towards me.
The focus, you're sharing that this was hurtful by Edwin doing this was hurtful, and you emphasized this was empathy shaming because your needs for empathy were not met. It was
my needs for empathy will be met or not, but I have boundaries and they will be respected, period. And I think my time's up, isn't it, James? Probably, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I've been heard. Thank you.
Okay. You don't want me to summarize anything?
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to pick another person. I will pick Edwin.
Listening.
Hi. Okay. I'm going to hang up my phone. My phone is calling, and it's a spam call. I just hung it up. Okay, so I'm trying to get my bearings because I am listening to people share. I heard Edwin share that he wants to train James for facilitator, and he said it would involve him and Bill and Lou. And then I heard Bill share that his needs for boundaries were not respected. And he expressed concerns that James trolled a disabled person who is no longer in this circle, and that there wasn't self-examination on that.
So I'm hearing you're sort of reflecting what it is that you heard myself and Bill say, and just talking, and that Bill, you're just reiterating that you heard Bill talk about boundaries and that James was trolling someone that was disabled. It sounds like you're just trying to recap everything you've heard.
I'm just recapping it because I'm just recapping. And that Bill mentioned the need for boundaries and how empathy is about not just empathy for oneself, but empathy for others, and what are the behaviors. That's what I've heard. That's the gist. And also Bill mentioned something called empathy shaming.
Yeah, so you're just addressing what you heard Bill say about respecting boundaries and really having a culture of empathy, and something called empathy shaming, the term empathy shaming.
Yeah. I also want to say from my perspective, just not the situation, but I'm going to just draw my family perspective. And what's happening for me is that I'm trying to be super careful here because I have gotten burned in my family. My brother has Asperger's, and his girlfriend may also have some kind of Asperger's, and they didn't have empathy for other people. Okay, and they did a lot of things that were extraordinarily hurtful, which is that defied cultural norms and thought it was okay. And and it was so off. Basically, it was such a taboo in our society. Yeah, I will share what my brothers, what they tried to do. They asked me to sleep in the same bed as my brother and girlfriend, not and I thought that's like, there was a tried to force me to do that, and I had to say no. And that was so egregious. I went to my parents because my brother just couldn't hold that. like, oh, it's a, he just couldn't hold that as being a cultural taboo. You don't force someone against their will. You don't keep on doing something. And because I went to my parents got upset and I was the blame. So I feel frustrated. I recognize my brother did not have the capability at all of saying, hey, you know what? This was not an okay behavior. You don't force someone against their will. I'm not saying that that's my history coming, and then I got involved, and now I have no brother.
Mm-hmm.
I have no brother relationship because of what happened.
So you have a brother who has autism or Asperger's, and he and his girlfriend had wanted you to be in the same bed with them, and you
The sister of his girlfriend tried to force me. I refused,
Oh,
and then and then my brother rationalized it because he doesn't have the social capacity. He doesn't see that's like so wrong. Yeah.
So he did. So the sister of his tried to force you, and you refused, and your brother just didn't understand that this was inappropriate, and then when you brought it up to your parents, that they blamed you for it. And
no, my parents didn't blame me. They actually thought his girlfriend was really wrong and didn't want her in the house. I didn't make the decision, but my brother decided that he was going to punish me, and he was going to do whatever he can to have retribution.
so your brother was really trying to punish you, and it sounds like you lost the relationship, and it looks like it's a time to.
Right. And the real issue was not my brother. It was the people around him who didn't set a boundary. Basically saying, like, you know what, your girlfriend did this, your sister had to tell us, you didn't acknowledge it, you have Asperger's, that we need to tell you this is so wrong. We're not going to allow this bad behavior. They allowed it.
So
and
you
my
see
brother,
that, yeah. So
and he
you really
became
see.
a tyrant.
Sorry. Yeah, so you really see what the problem is the people around your brother didn't set a boundary, and you feel that they had responsibility for setting a boundary. He has Asperger's and just doesn't understand social norms. And
right,
yeah.
because he would, and that would, it would have been to his benefit. I mean, they did him a disservice because he could have like been, that was what he needed to know. Like, hey, you know what?
I just want to say the time. I know there's a lot there.
It'll come, right. So
it'll come around again. So
right.
Yeah, so it's really about the boundaries and the social norms and just him just not understanding it. But it'll come around again, so you'll be able to continue.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Let's see who to speak to. I guess I'll speak to Alex.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm not quite sure where to go with this. I do see dialogue. I guess I do see dialogue is important, and it's part of a culture of empathy. So there's nobody forced to do a dialogue in a culture of empathy. It's like, this is there is no force. You can certainly invite people, and inviting people to take part, I don't see that as forcing. So people have a choice, we have a choice to invite people, and people have a choice to take part or not.
Okay. So you're feeling a little kind of uncertain as to how to proceed, and kind of starting with just reflecting on dialogue, is you seeing it as important to empathy, but seeing it as an invitation and not necessarily forceful thing.
Yeah, so that's what I try to advocate for is if there's an issue, okay, we just have an empathy circle around it. And one thing, it sort of helps promote the empathy circle as a practice. It's staying consistent with what our principles are. So yeah, and sometimes it's difficult and painful, but it's sort of how we go into those dark corners in hell. To sort of illuminate those dark corners. And with that understanding, I just feel sort of optimistic that, we just see everyone's humanity if we can do that.
So you really find a lot of value in doing empathy circles to resolve conflicts and yeah, and ways of kind of seeing each other's humanity and shining light on things we don't necessarily see.
And that sort of creates a feeling of connection. One is there's sort of a, I guess that's why a culture is important to me, because that feeling of connection is important. And that sort of that feeling of understanding is important to me.
Mm-hmm. So you really value the connection and understanding that you get from empathy circles also.
Yeah. So I feel heard for now. Fully heard.
Okay. James, would you be willing to listen to me?
Yes, listening.
Thank you. I don't know what to say either. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what to say either. I feel like, yeah, I have no context for anything that we just talked about. So maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah, you're not sure what to say, and you don't feel like you have the context to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling sort of interested in hearing more dialogue from the people involved in it, like Bill and Edwin and you, James. I don't know. I guess I share some optimism that like the dialogue is a good way to do it, and I'm kind of, I don't know. I feel compassion towards people, the feelings that people are expressing here.
You're interested in hearing more from the people involved directly, and you have some sense of hope that dialogue is a way forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else I want to say.
You don't know if there's anything else you want to say.
Yeah, I guess I'll just stop there. I mean, I don't know if this fits in the structure, but I would definitely be curious to hear more from you guys. The things that Bill brought up and everything. Yeah.
You'd like to stop and hear more from us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dean, would you listen to me?
Yes, James, I'm listening.
Okay. So this accusation of me trolling a disabled person, this is the first I've heard that accusation. I don't know what that is or who Bill is talking about. My guess is that he's talking about Carolina, but I'm not aware of Carolina being disabled. I'm not aware of talking to anyone who is disabled, so I'm really clueless about it. And that's part of one of the problems with not having dialogue, is that just basic questions of fact start veering off in two very different directions.
So I'm hearing you talking about the fact that you're not aware of you ever trolling someone who's disabled. You're not sure who it is. You have mentioned the name Carolina, and then you mentioned the fact that without discourse or communications between these two alternative views, the views tend to split apart from each other, and you end up with very divergent thinkings.
Yeah. I'm share Edwin's view that this is an invitation to Bill to participate, which is different than coercion. I don't have the ability to coerce Bill to dialogue with me. I know he's here by choice. I haven't, as far as I'm aware, made any threats of doing anything against him if he doesn't participate. On the other hand, I do see Bill using coercion to exclude me from the trainings. That's not even a criticism. It's just, he has the, within that context, he has the power to force me to participate, which would be different than asking me not to participate, but allowing me to make the choice for myself, which is something that I try to do when I'm a leader. When people want to do things and I would like them to do something different, to the best of my ability, I try to make it clear what I want, but also give them the ability to make a choice.
So I hear you talking about the fact that in positions of authority, the person in authority should make their points of view clear to the people that their opinion is being expressed on. I hear you talking about the fact that you feel you have been excluded unfairly. I hear that you are talking about the fact that when you are in a position of authority, you try to be as inclusive and as fair-minded as possible.
Yeah, that is what I said, but I want to take a step back. I've adopted the language of coercion, and I want to change that because I think it is okay. I think it's fine for Bill to decide who he wants to participate without calling that coercion.
So you want to take a step back from the language that was used earlier and say that you think it's fine for Bill to decide who is included and who is not included.
Yeah. And within that, I would also like to make space for me talking about the impact on me of being excluded, of being asked or told, not to participate.
So whilst it's okay for to be excluded, you'd like to understand why you're excluded.
No, thank you. I mean, that's true, but that's not what I said. I would like to have the freedom on both sides, right? People have the freedom to decide who is in their group and who participates, and other people have the freedom to talk about how that impacts them.
So I hear what you're saying earlier on was how it impacted you, and you've restated about the fact that there is the freedom to have someone in or out of a group, but you would like to talk about how it personally impacts you.
Thank you. Yeah, it does impact me. I'm sad that I don't have an opportunity to develop relationships with people who are interested in building a culture of empathy.
I hear that you're sad about the fact that you are excluded from being participatory, I can't even say the word, being part of the culture of empathy's progression.
Yeah, thank you. And that's my time.
Bill.
Listening?
I love James deeply, but I've experienced his wrath on a couple of occasions, and it's a very intimidating and scary thing to be on the wrong side of.
So you really love James, but you've also seen him act out, and it's scary to be on the wrong side of his anger.
Yeah, he doesn't see it as anger. He sees it as expressing a point of view. Mm-hmm. But from another human being's point of view, when that is expressed upon them, it is perceived as an angry act, even though he may not necessarily understand it from his point of view as an angry act.
Right. So you want to clarify is that James doesn't see it as an angry act, but that the effect on someone who he's directing this his whatever to sees it as an angry act and can be intimidated.
Yeah, it's James is very intense. I am an intense individual myself. I know that when I become too intense, I see people's eyes roll in the back of the head and they go, oh no, he's on one again. But James is not that sort of intense. He's just full bore, like 200 miles an hour, whoosh. And it's very hard to stop him when he's in full flow.
So you're saying that you understand intensity, you're intense, and you can kind of read people and their eyes roll in the back of their head when you get on a rant, and you can kind of modify. James is a bit different in the sense that it's 200 miles, it's straight ahead, and it's very hard to, intervene or to, or he doesn't self-evaluate at those times.
I mean, I would like to say this so that James can hear it, but we were in a circle and he literally, I tried to intervene because he was loading me up with loads of intense stuff and I wanted to reflect it and he wouldn't let me reflect. He just kept coming on and coming on. So for virtually the whole 5 minutes, I didn't get a chance at doing any reflection at all. It was just basically a statement and that wasn't respecting the process.
Right. So different from what Edwin's experience was, is that in the circle, that James at one point was just talking and just coming on really hard and wouldn't let you reflect, and you feel that doesn't respect the empathy circle process.
Yeah, and the idea of coercion is a big problem in all cultures, and when lots of people keep saying, oh, well, this is the right thing to do, we need to do this, may not necessarily be the right thing for someone else.
So you're saying that coercion is a broad area of concern worldwide, and so that sometimes when people say, oh, we need to do this, maybe from the person who is trying to be persuaded, they don't see it that way, or who's being coerced, sorry. Yeah,
no, yeah, persuaded and coercion to me are pretty much the same brush. It's just one's more extreme than the other one.
Okay.
So this idea of, I understand what you're saying by empathy shaming. And for someone that's not been empathy shamed into doing something, it's very hard for them to actually walk in that shoes and understand it. They may think they understand intellectually, but from the heart and from the spirit, when it's happened to you and you've been forced to do things you don't want to do, it's not a very nice place to put someone in that position.
Right. So you understand empathy shaming, you understand when I talked about it, and that, but it's for a person who hasn't experienced it, it's very hard for them to understand because it's an experience, not necessarily a definition.
Yeah, and it's very visceral rather than intellectual.
Right.
It's in here, and it hurts a lot when you feel that your heart's not being respected or heard, and other people are still saying, oh yes, but we haven't done this, and you think, well, hang on, I thought we dealt with that one already. Like, come on, why is this one still rolling on? It's just hard. It's
hard that when you enter an empathy or a dialogue, there's a certain amount of openness, and when you're coerced, it hurts because you're open and you feel, the pain.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I feel fully heard.
Okay, thanks. All right. Let's see. I haven't talked to James. You listen?
Listening.
So, first of all, coercion. It's not an invitation. I mean, first of all, James, there are two processes going here, and I'd like to separate you from when I talked about what I feel when I felt coerced by Edwin. So with the context is that over a period of 2 months, Edwin has been pushing this circle, for us to get together in some dialogue to fix something, and that's happened probably 7 or 8 times in emails and other things like that. And then he brings it up again. He doesn't consider my feelings. He just throws it out there. And so, yeah, I consider when you do that, and I've also said on 7 or 8 times, no. And so when you don't respect that, that's coercion, no matter how nicely you put it. I'll
So
stop
you're distinguishing between two processes or relationships, but maybe what I'm doing and what Edwin's doing. And
there. Yeah.
you're talking about Edwin has, over the last 2 months, been bringing it up repeatedly with you. And that is not an invitation. That is coercion.
In my experience, people will decide what they, Edwin doesn't see it that way. I understand that. And then between us, first of all, I would hope that you not use names. This is being recorded. So that's another thing that you did that to kind of me steps over the line right here, right now. And all I can say is that I've spoken to this person. I won't use the name, and I don't really want to get into it here because I want to respect their boundaries. Nevertheless, they've spoken to you about it, and you profess that, oh, I don't even know about this. I'll stop there.
So I used a name, and
Mhm.
that is that's crossing a boundary because this is being recorded.
Mhm.
A boundary that you don't want to cross. And so you're also saying that you know that this person has spoken to me about it, but I am saying that I don't know anything about it.
Right. And as far as just to be honest and open with you, James, I don't want to train you. I don't. One of the things we say is that we care about the people that we train, and I wouldn't want anybody that I train to be subject to the behavior that you've subjected me to or this other person. Again, call me old-fashioned. We've engaged in dialogue. That doesn't seem to count. And so basically, at some point, one has to change one's behavior. And then when one changes one's behavior over a period of time, then I'm certainly willing to reassess. I'll stop there.
You'd like me to change my behavior. And once you see me changing my behavior, then you might reassess. But it's as if the dialogue that has happened that you have been open to doesn't count.
Right. And when you said like you to change, I don't mean to say that I'm going to try to dictate what you did, but if you decide, and this is what I tried to, I think you misunderstood me. If you decide to change your behavior, I would respect it. I don't feel that I want you to change your behavior because I said so, because you have made, what I consider a more empathic decision. I'll stop there.
You feel I misunderstood. You don't want me to change my behavior, but if I decided on my own to do it, that would be different.
Right. And
I'm
sorry, go ahead, finish what you said.
Yeah. That would be more of an empathic move if I were to decide on my own to do it.
Right. And then also is that I've never said that I wanted you to be excluded from empathy circles. Because I do agree that, and we're having a dialogue here. I mean, Lou's not here, but the three of us are. So I never wanted you to be excluded from empathy circles, but I don't feel that your behavior warrants the trust that people coming in would place in a facilitator trainer. And, and that's the way I feel, and I still feel.
You have not wanted me to be excluded from empathy circles, but for empathy trainings or training to be a facilitator, you feel a certain amount of trust is necessary, and you don't have that trust in me.
Right. And that occurs within and without the circle. We live our whole lives. These circles are fine, but we live our whole lives, and it has to, include behavior outside of the circle as well. Thanks, James. My time's up. And thanks for listening, James. I appreciate it. You did that very well.
Okay. Alex, would you listen to me?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a recorded call, and I'm glad it is. And the idea that we can't speak about facts because it's a recorded call, because we need to respect this anonymous person, I think is problematic, very problematic. There's so many, there's so many things to address here.
Okay, maybe I can just reflect.
No,
So,
no. No. So this idea that Dean came up with, that I am breaking the process because I told him one time, don't reflect me. That to me is, that's not how I understand the process. I prioritize the person speaking. It's not about the person listening. And if I'm the person speaking and I ask you, please don't interrupt me, just listen to me. Well, part of the process for me, my understanding, is to prioritize me. In Bill's world, I suppose I can't ask that or have an idea about it. I can't have a difference of opinion because I'm somehow, too different. I'm not trainable, but I also can't have an opinion. And I'm really angry. I'm really angry right now at Bill for talking at me, for wanting me to empathize with him. I could do that. I could ask Bill to talk to me right now and load him up with all kinds of judgments and then put him on the spot and try to get him to listen to me. But I know that it's difficult to empathize with someone who has judgments about you. So I'm choosing to do that. Call that empathic, call that intelligent. I'm making a strategic choice to not ask him to do that because I know if I was in his situation, it would be easier for me to hear Bill if someone else who didn't have a personal stake in it was working to empathize with Bill. And then the pieces of information, I would have more of a chance to absorb the pieces of information at my own pace, rather than trying to, hold myself in my anger about what Bill is saying, and at the same time hold Bill. Great skill, difficult to do.
you're feeling very angry with having had to reflect back to Bill the things he was saying, despite the fact that you had a lot of emotions around them yourself.
Yeah. This thing about empathy shaming, I'm sorry, but I see it happening in two directions. I see Edwin saying to Bill, could you have some more empathy? Could you be more open to dialogue? And Bill says, well, that's empathy shaming me. And I see Dean and Bill doing the same thing, saying that I don't have enough empathy. So I wonder if they see a difference between, or if they also see themselves as empathy shaming.
Mm-hmm. So you're feeling conflicted around this use of the word empathy shaming and the way that's being used.
It's not conflicted. It's very clear to me.
Okay. So it's very clear to you.
Yeah. This 5 hours of dialogue that Bill talks about was before Bill decided to exclude me from the trainings. So they were not 5 hours where I had an opportunity to talk to him about this issue. And this is the third time that we've had an interaction since he excluded me. There was one private conversation between me, Bill, and Lou. Then there was one empathy circle, besides for this one, that Bill was open to. And, I wrote on a post in Facebook last night that, to my calculation, if there were 4 hours of trainings once a week for the last 2 or 3 months, I mean, there's dozens of hours that I missed out on. It's an arbitrary comparison, but I think that we haven't had a chance to really talk. And I'm open to it, but I'm not counting on it. Bill has been very clear that he's not interested in me. He doesn't trust me, and he has a lot of animosity to me, and he doesn't see talking to me as being valuable, and that's my time.
Okay. So you're reflecting on the amount of discussion, and you just don't think it's been effective, or there hasn't been enough of it yet, and you're feeling angry about that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Edwin, would you be willing to?
Yep, listening.
Right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I feel like I can understand the frustrations on that people are voicing. I mean, I'm slowly getting context, but I can understand the frustration. So I'll stop there real quick. But
Yeah, you're getting more of a sense of understanding the frustrations everyone might be having here. So getting a bigger picture, more of a clarity.
mm-hmm. And yeah, and I understood what James just said about when he was reflecting on the fact that he was reflecting to Bill. That is something that I was thinking when I was listening to people talk, is like, man, I can imagine that if I'm having an issue with somebody, and then I need to like reflect back to them and empathize with them, especially when they're discussing the issue. I could imagine that being very emotionally challenging. So definitely I understood what he was saying there.
Yeah, so again, you're having understanding for if you have an issue with someone and they're speaking to you, and you have to reflect that, hear that, as well as all the reactions you're having, you can just really understand the challenge that would have for you.
And I understand, like, it makes sense to me that it eventually would be good to empathize with the person that you're having a conflict with. Like, I'm not saying I don't think that's not valuable, but yeah, it just.
Yeah, so you also have some understanding that actually might be good to talk to the person you're having this challenge with, and have them actually hear you. So you're kind of holding both. You can see the difficulty of it, but also maybe the benefits of it.
Yeah, and I guess it's making me think about the structure of the empathy circle a little bit, especially when there does seem to be like a specific interaction between members. Like, I just imagine if I was having an interaction with somebody specifically, and then then someone else talks maybe about another subject. I mean, like Sarah shared about her brother, but that was right after Bill had shared about the conflicts that he was having. And I can imagine if I were in Bill's shoes, like wait, I'm still stuck on this subject, like, and I don't want to be cold to Sarah, but like that's in my mind right now, and so it would be hard for me emotionally to like switch gears and then empathize with Sarah.
Yeah, so you can really see sort of the dynamics of if you're in conflict with someone or an issue with someone, it's kind of very alive. And then you're sort of talking that topic, and then you go to someone else and they're talking about a whole different topic. And this is sort of the difficulty of sort of, staying maybe aware of the new topic. Or
Yeah. And yeah, and so what I'm thinking about is like the structure of the empathy circle, and like, is there like, should it go into a special mode or something, like, we just bounce back and forth between two people specifically or something like that, so that you don't have this like these gut-wrenching things of like, oh, okay, wait, we have to put that on the hold for a second because someone else is talking about something, or now I have to talk to the person that I have all this anger about and I have to listen to them, right? Like maybe there should be a structure where there's like three people, and they kind of reflect to the person in the middle for a bit, and then they reflect to each other. But at least that way it can you can stay in the energy of the conflict without having these like gut-wrenching sort of changes.
yeah, so you're just thinking about the structure of the empathy circle. There might be, so you don't change the topic. So you kind of stay within the topic and you're kind of moving from one topic to the other and you're finding that sort of gut wrenching and you're thinking of sort of some redesign issue ideas for maybe for more effectiveness or.
Yeah, specifically in these conflicts, and also
Yeah.
just having to empathize with somebody that you're having an issue with. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Then Sarah, can I speak to you? Are you available?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to wrap my head around the term empathy shaming. I hadn't kind of heard that that concept. So I was just trying to get an understanding, and what I'm sort of getting is the way people are using it is it's judging someone for being unempathic. Is sort of what I'm getting is the definition of it, or how I'm hearing it. It's like you're unempathic. No, you're unempathic. No, you're unempathic. is sort of how I'm hearing sort of the definition of it.
Mm. So you are exploring what is the definition of empathy shaming? What does that really mean? Does that mean that you're not being empathic?
Yeah. So saying that another person is not being empathic may be unempathic itself. So yeah, so it might be just judgmental or just judging. And it brings me to, the work of Marshall Rosenberg, where he's talking about, well, what is the impact that the actions have, right? It's like getting into the feelings and, the deeper needs people have. So as long as we're not talking about our own feelings, and maybe the feelings we would desire, we're just not, that's kind of the deeper level of empathy. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, and for me, it's like, oh, here's all this turmoil. I'm feeling all this turmoil of trying to integrate all this, and I'm just feeling sort of turmoil around it. And I also feel hope in what we're doing. So so I feel turmoil as well as I feel hope in this dialogue. So.
So you emphasized Marshall Rosenberg talking about empathy being what is the impact of one's actions on others. And let's explore this deeper level of empathy. And maybe the deeper level of empathy is what is the impact of actions on others and what are those needs?
Yeah, and it's really, and it's talking about our felt experience. So instead of saying you don't have empathy, it's like, oh, your actions, and this is the feeling I have from it. And I don't want it to be like, this politically left stuff that I hear is like, oh, we have to have safe spaces and you can't say anything that offends the other person or hurts the other person. Because a lot of times the reason people are offended is because they're not empathizing. If we would have just empathized with the other person, it kind of transforms what they're saying. We don't hear the judgments. And that's actually Marshall Rosenberg talked about that, is empathy kind of transforms the judgments. You almost don't even hear the judgments. You see what's sort of behind the judgments. And so this is kind of like the deeper level of how do we really create this culture of empathy, is to speak more from our felt experience.
Okay, there's a couple of unpacking things here. There's a couple of things. Speaking from felt experience, and also, what do we need? How does empathy correlate to safety? Are they two different things? And you spoke about Marshall Rosenberg criticizing politically correctness, which is linked to safe spaces, and how
he didn't criticize it. It's just it's just it's like I was just mentioning that.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. So basically, you shared that if you can't say something offensive, then you're not being authentic, and empathy in itself transforms judgment.
Yeah. So if we just start empathizing with each other, we're maybe just speaking from and I need to get better at that myself. I sort of see it and I do a lot of analysis, like, here I'm trying to describe everything instead of saying the impact on me. So it's just something I need to get better at. I see for myself, is to sort of name my felt experience better. Yeah,
Hmm.
so it's kind of my growing edge, and so.
Growing edge is naming the felt experience. You also mentioned impact of actions on others.
Yeah, and it's the impact on others, as people say, oh, you can't say this, but it's because they're not empathizing with what's being said. If they were just empathizing with what's being said, they wouldn't be feeling pain, right? It seems to me, if you're kind of can hear the other person and kind of not, and just be able to empathize with where is it that they're coming from, it actually kind of, you don't even feel pain. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
Hmm. You're sharing about the structure of empathic circles, and within that specific structure, you're exploring, well, what happens if you can't say this and can't empathize with what's being said in that circle?
It's not quite it, but close enough. I feel really, I heard to my satisfaction. My time's up.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna pick Bill.
Okay, listening.
A lot to unpack here. Um, okay, so I do think that empathy is not just my own self-empathy. It's having the capacity to see what are the impacts of my action and behaviors on others. So it's basically, and I actually have a couple of things typed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to look at this. So I think empathy is looking at the impacts of my choices on others. And that's actually the reason I brought up my brother thing, was that my brother does not have an awareness of the impact of his behaviors on others. End of story.
So you're talking about self-empathy, but you're talking about empathy in general extends to being aware of the impact that your actions have on others, the effect that it has on others. And that's why you saw the parallel with your brother, because your brother was incapable of doing that.
Like, not capable of seeing, he doesn't focus on him. It's always on the other person. It's always on what this person did, what this other person did, what this other person did. But it never lands on what did I specifically do? And
Okay.
how did that person feel?
So your brother has very little self-reflection about his part in creating whatever he creates.
Not only that, but he doesn't have a part in creating what he has created.
Okay, so he's completely just doesn't take responsibility.
No, it's always like he chose to not live with his girlfriend. That's on him. That's not on me. But it's on me because he may put all his choices on me. Anyway, I'm not gonna go into the story, but that's
Okay.
my background, where I come from, which is about my brother, not about anyone else here. And I will say this, I'm gonna look at something that was said earlier. I typed it out.
Mm-hmm.
So it said, this was Dean, and sharing this specifically. Is that allowed in this circle to reiterate something someone shared? I wanna make sure I'm not breaking a rule.
It's okay with Dean, it looks like, and Edwin.
Is it okay with Dean to reiterate something
Yeah,
you
he
shared?
said, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it's a scary thing to be on the wrong side of anger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Dean said. Let me just see if I can, my window is like kind of small. I don't want to, so basically Dean said, he saw James sees it expressing his point of view, but James doesn't see it as an angry act. And James is very intense. Dean also shared, he understands that he himself is intense. But again,
Okay.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
All right, that's a lot to unpack. So you were saying, first of all, about your brother, and how your brother chose not to live with his girlfriend, but somehow your brother holds you responsible for that. And that's a displaced responsibility there. And then you were talking about the intensity, and I'm not quite getting on, the intensity, well, just the effect of such intensity and anger on other people. But I really didn't, I don't know if I did that justice or not.
So Dean basically said that it's a scary thing to be on the wrong side of James' anger.
Right. It's a scary thing to be on the wrong side of James. Okay. Anger.
So that's, and I understand, anger, has a definite utility. So I don't know, I wasn't there, so I'm just repeating what, Dean said. And just,
Okay.
I'm just basically, and I'm just looking at what is coercion. That came up too. And that, okay, the value of empathy is, I think, respecting people's different viewpoints. So if someone doesn't feel comfortable with something, to respect that, otherwise it is seen as coercion. If they keep on saying no, and they're not comfortable, and someone keeps on persisting, that, in my opinion, that could be seen as coercion.
Okay. So your thing about empathy is perspective taking on both persons' part, and then there's a negotiated agreement there. But if someone, even if they keep on persisting, then that goes into coercion.
Yes, and this is my time, and just to wrap up, that I think that empathy, first and foremost, should be awareness of one's actions on others and self-reflecting, looking at one's actions first and foremost, as opposed to others.
Right. So you think that for you, empathy is really looking at your effect on others and then reflecting on that and how you might grow and change in the future.
And balancing it with, but having a balance, not being fully, yeah.
Right, with having a balance with, and I assume you mean by self-empathy.
Right, not putting it all on yourself either, but actually like balancing between others and yourself. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So there's that community feeling. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Dean, could you listen to me?
Certainly, Bill.
Thank you. So let's go to the empathy shaming. So what I mean by that is that non-participation in an empathy circle. Empathy is a much larger issue. Culture of empathy is a much larger issue than the empathy circle. But when someone judges you by your participation or non-participation in an empathy circle, and they keep on persisting and persisting and persisting, that's empathy shaming to me. That's how I experience it. I'll stop there.
Okay, so empathy is a lot more than just the empathy circle. But if someone, as you expressed your understanding of the word empathy shaming as someone keeps saying you should take part in this circle, you should take part in this circle, you should take part in this circle, even though you've expressed the point of view that you don't want to be part of that circle, someone keeps doing it to try and coerce you into taking part in something you don't want to do.
Right. And another thing that James says when he says Bill decided not to to exclude me or to whatever, that's true. First of all, I'll take responsibility. That is my feeling, but also Lou did, and Lou is pushed around by no one, and Lou came to his own decision, and he agreed with that, and we both explained that to James, and but when James decided to troll me, it was Bill's the excluder, and that's actually not trying to build a culture of empathy, not trying to build dialogue, but to basically try to focus his ire on one person, try to cull me out from the herd or whatever it is. So I'll stop there.
Right. So when the exclusion event happened, it wasn't just a Bill decision. It was actually a Bill and Lou decision. So therefore, this constant affirmation by James that you excluded me, just you, and only Bill excluded me, is actually something that others should be made aware of, because Lou is pushed around by no one. He's very
Right.
adamant in his own mind, and
Yeah.
it was a joint decision.
Right, right. And I know I'm bringing Lou into this, so I'm violating my own red line here in a way. His name has been mentioned just to say that Lou's this really sweet guy and very wise, and so you know, and not a pushover. And then the question is, how much dialogue is enough? And it seems that what Edwin and James in this issue, it's never enough. I mean, there was that 5 hours, there was the 1 hour, I've been in empathy circles. I never said that I didn't want to be in an empathy circle in this format with James. Other people have. And, you know, and there's a point when, you know, the dialogue is not enough. At some point, somebody has to make a decision as to how they're going to behave, you know.
Okay, so let me see if I got that.
Mhm.
You've had hours and hours of discussion
Mhm.
with James about this,
Mhm.
and at some point there is no more time for discussion, because you basically talked through it all, and therefore the point of talking about something that's already been talked about becomes superfluous.
Yeah, and I'll just correct it, because we didn't have hours and hours of discussion about this issue with James. James is absolutely right that we had these discussions before the facilitation issue came up. And then Lou and I entered into a 1 hour empathy circle with James, where we both explained what we were both feeling independently. And then James decided to basically blame me and say Bill is the excluder.
Okay,
While,
so
by the way, but let's say while he's participating in an empathy circle. Okay.
okay, so the clarification was that there wasn't hours and hours of discussion about this exclusion event. There was just a 1 hour one-off
Right.
with you and Lou discussing the issue with James.
Right. And I do want to acknowledge what both James and Alex said about how it might be very difficult for James to have reflected me there. That was sort of me trying to, you know, not exclude James, you know, in that I didn't choose this particular subject. I came to the circle. Thanks. But I do want to acknowledge James' capacity and how that might be. But the other hand, when James makes a decision or makes a characterization about me, he does not understand me. And then I'm done. Thank you.
Right, so I'm hearing that you think that James, when he makes a characterization about you, doesn't quite actually understand what's going on. You've been in the circles with him before. You realize that actually asking him to be reflective from his point of view was bad, but actually from your point of view, it was trying to be inclusive.
No, I'm saying it was difficult. It wasn't bad.
Okay.
We're in a circle. James could have talked to me or will talk to me, and I'll do the same thing. And I'm ready to do that.
Okay. So the clarification was that it wasn't bad. It was just hard for James to actually reflect back. And you are expecting at some point James to have the opportunity to talk to you, and then you to be able to reflect back to James.
Yeah, if that's what he decides to do. Yeah, thanks. I feel
Okay.
heard. Thank you.
Thank you. James.
Listening.
I have something that arises within me, not particular to you, but just particular to this dynamic in the conversation at the moment. Pause.
Something is arising in you related to this dynamic.
And sometimes we are deaf to hearing what others say to us. Why? I don't know. I was deaf for a long time. And it took me a long time to actually give space to other people's thoughts rather than just responding with my own emotion. Pause.
We're sometimes completely deaf to what other people are saying, and you're not sure why that is, but you know that that's been true for you. You were unable to hear other people.
Yeah, it took a long time for me to actually calm down enough with inside my own turbulence and blaming everyone else about things to actually own the fact that quite a lot of my displaced blame was my own issue rather than someone else's issue. And I was actually projecting my own inner turmoils onto others. Pause.
When you were able to settle the chaos inside of yourself, you then were able to see you were projecting your chaos onto others.
Yeah. And it's very it's actually very empowering to admit. But projection is the way I now understand others. So as others attack me, I now actually hear their own inner demons.
The way you understand projection now is that it is other people showing you what's going on for them. It's them showing you their inner demons.
Yes, for we hate in others what we hate in ourselves, and we can see it because we identify it in ourselves. So I now try and teach everyone around me to actually no longer get upset by what people say about them, but to actually listen. And then you'll be able to actually understand what's going on behind the mask of this civility or niceness that's our current culture, our toxic culture. Of course.
We hate in others the parts and things that we see which we hate about ourselves. And so you encourage other people to try to understand what other people are saying before getting angry about what.
No, not understand. No, to actually identify the fact that when someone's attacking, I'll say, if someone attacks me, I realize that what they're actually doing is displacing their own inner problem onto me because they can identify that within them and they push it onto me saying, I see you're doing this. I don't like that in myself. So I'm going to have a go at you about that. Does that make sense?
So if somebody attacks you, you know what they're doing is they're identifying something inside of themselves and they're using attacking you as an opportunity to bring it out.
Not bring it out. Actually, they just recoil at what they see in others, what they don't like in themselves. So when someone says, "Oh, I don't like A because A has got like a very bad attitude about this," actually, what they should be aware of is actually their attitude just then is actually quite bad. Pause.
They are recoiling over something that they don't like in themselves. And they're calling it bad. If they're saying that something that someone else is doing is bad, what they're actually doing is saying that it's bad about themselves.
They're recognizing that badness in someone else because they have it inside them. Birds of a feather. You see A as A because you are A within you.
In this time, they're recognizing that they have that bad thing in themselves, actually.
Yeah, that's why they attack it in others.
That's why they attack it in others, because they recognize it.
From themselves, yeah. Thank you, James. I feel fully heard.
So we just have 8 minutes, so you want to do one more 5 minutes, James, then we'll bring it to an end.
Yeah, please. I'd like you to listen to me, Edwin.
Okay, listening.
Responsibility is a funny thing. I appreciated the discussion around responsibility. It kind of was implicit, but I want to say it's true. I have at times pinned the exclusion onto Bill, but actually I absolutely recognize that Lou was a partner in that decision. And I also recognize that you're a partner in that decision, that you played an active role in empowering those people to make that decision.
So you're just looking at responsibility, the topic of, and that you'd sort of pin the responsibility on Bill, but then you're really seeing that actually there's other responsibility too, that I have some and Lou have some too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And myself, when we often can get on the same page about facts, me and Bill, and I have done a lot of things that are difficult, are frightening, are frustrating for people. And I recognize those as being the cause or reason for people wanting to be distant from me, not have dialogue with me. And I think that what Dean was just saying around projection, I mean, I agree with all of that. We do we do dislike the things in others that we dislike in ourselves.
So it sounds like you're talking about shared responsibility, that we all have this responsibility, and you see that the actions that you've done and the impact you've had on others, you have responsibility for that. And you're also agreeing with Dean about how we project our judgments, our own self-judgments onto others, and et cetera, that he was saying. You sort of agree with that too.
Yeah. And I liked what you were saying before, Edwin, around exploring the impact on you and exploring the felt experience of that impact on you, that you said that was a leading edge of work for you. And I think it's a leading edge of work for me, is really getting in touch with and understanding the impact on me, the felt experience, and the impact on me of what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. So you're just building on what I said, that resonated with you about really what is the impact, the feelings, and being able to sort of identify those, and also the impact that it has on your own felt experience, and maybe that whole felt experience quality is an edge for you too, like it is for me.
Yeah. And you know, another thing I like about this space is that we can explore. You talked about exploring the nooks and the dark corners of hell. I love the analogy of hell, but it's about exploring the places that we're unaware of or unsure of. And I think there are open questions, you know. Do I get a say in, how much of a say, let's say, you know, do I have in this call being recorded? How does that relate to, you know, the norms? Because we get smaller and smaller distinctions. I do want to care about the people that we talk about here. And I also want to be able to talk about facts and not be vague about who is doing what.
It sounds like you'd like a bit more clarity about sort of the norms of the group. Like, you know, can you talk about people? Can you talk about facts? You know, how much impact do you have on the structure of what we're doing?
Yeah.
And also going into those dark corners, kind of,
Yeah. And so I am coming away from this circle not knowing who this person is that I'm supposedly attacking. And I think beyond just getting that specific information, I think it's important to be, have places where we can get on the same page about facts, and that's my time.
Yeah, so you're just like, you don't know who this person is that you're being, told that you're attacking, and you'd like to just get on the same page with the facts, and have a space for that.
In this case and in all cases, I think
Mhm.
it's really valuable to get on the same page about facts.
Yeah, so you'd really like to get on the same page about the facts that we're talking about, have some clarity about that and mutual understanding.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Robin.
cool. So we jumped right into the empathy circle, and we're just not really doing a debrief. We're just taking it right up to the edge. So it's like maximum empathy circle time, and I really appreciated it. And to be continued next week. So any sort of final comment? I just say thank you to everyone for taking part. James?
Yeah,
comment?
same. Thank you, everyone, for taking part.
Val?
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Dean?
Until next time.
Sarah?
Until next time.
Okay, until next time. See you later. See you next